GPU. All right. So today we are going to be adding in gravity. So I'm starting my player way up the top, and then I want it to fall down as soon as the game starts. This is also going to make it so that when we jump, it falls back to the ground as well. So it's going to be gravity, and then also making it so our player stands on the ground when it reaches the ground. So in our main library here, we're going to add in, also, this might be a little bit too big, actually. How is this text? Too big, too small? We're going to have gravity, and we're going to have this be a vector 2, which I have not brought in. So, to use GGEZ and algebra of vector 2. Of type F32 here. Then we're going to set this up for us so that gravity, it's essentially a constant. So if I just say, all right, vector 2 new, gravity doesn't move us left and right. So that's going to be 0.0. And then downwards, that's going to be, let's just try 0.01. That will make us move down. And then we'll store that in the struct. All right, so that gives us our gravity. I believe that we already have, well, actually, no, we don't have. In our player, we're gonna need some kind of force system. So we need we have our location. We need the ability to update the location from the velocity, and we need to update the velocity from the acceleration and reset that. So let's go ahead and add in, we want a acceleration, which is a vector 2, and a velocity, which is a vector 2. Okay, and once I have this, we need to actually set these. So we'll do let acceleration equals vector 2 new, and then we'll be resetting this to a basically empty vector. You have to get back to work 7#9, but it'll be interesting to see what this looks like in Rust. I did a little platform game series in F# using the Minkowski difference for collisions. Oh, nice. That's awesome. And you want to port that to GGEZ Rust. That's great. This is not a full platformer, but like Infinite Runner is, I guess, close enough. It's like a super simplified version, but that's gonna be awesome. Yeah, if you end up porting it over and you have it on GitHub, share it when you get that. I'll be happy to like take a look at it and see how it runs. But anyways, have fun at work. All right, let velocity equals vector 2 new. All right, so we start with no movement, so no acceleration, no velocity. We need to store these in the player. And now we need a system to like apply a force to the player. So we're gonna have a pub function apply force. It's gonna take a mute self. We're not gonna return anything. This should just be fine. Oh, and we need the force. Force is gonna be a vector 2 with F32s inside. And then I want to say self dot, and this is the reason why I'm using vectors here is just for this right here. Self dot acceleration plus equals the force. I mean, it just makes it so much simpler than having to go in and like say self dot acceleration dot x plus equals force dot x. Does that matrix math for us. All right, so once we apply the force, we can actually use that at this point. So in our update, we're going to want to just have our player apply the gravity force every single frame. So this is going to be self.player.apply force and add in self.force. Now this is something that I'm noticing here. This is taking ownership. Self.gravity. It's going to take ownership of this gravity. Graphics. Gravity. Autocomplete. You're supposed to be my friend here. So apply force is taking ownership of self.gravity, but because we're in a loop, we have to use gravity over and over and over again. So the way that Rust is doing, handling this behind the scenes is it's cloning gravity for us. If I were to come in here and say, well, I want force, but I just want it to be a reference of a vector too. So if I do that, and now I pass in a reference, we don't have any problems still. What ends up happening is we're no longer cloning. We're just using the same piece of memory. So this is actually going to be a little bit easier on us memory-wise, mostly memory-wise. Like I don't think this is going to help at all with a CPU. Maybe like a tiny bit. Well, we've applied the force, but this isn't going to actually make our character move. So we need some kind of like update, like physics systems. So maybe like pub function run would be a nice one. So pub function self. We still don't need to return anything, at least like from what I understand. We're now going to update all of these, like the acceleration, the velocity, and the location. So we're going to do self.velocity plus equals self.acceleration. That's going to make us move down or apply the force to all the accumulated forces to the velocity. Then we're going to update the location. So self.location plus equals self.velocity. And then finally, we need to reset the acceleration so that it just isn't like building on top of itself. Self.acceleration times equals 0.0. And that will reset acceleration to, well, x is 0, y is 0. So let's run that in here. So self.player.run. We don't need to hand it anything. It'll just automatically run. And then this should make the player now fall. Let's see if that works. It did work. It also, it just like disappeared really fast. So I'm thinking that our gravity is a little bit too much for us. Let's like add a couple zeros in here. Now notice I'm not using any kind of like delta time or anything else. The reason for that is because the book Game Programming Patterns actually has a section on how to properly frame limit yourself so that and like calculate all of the distances. So until then, I'm actually going to program this tied to the CPU cycles. So if you go and you try to run this on your computer, you're going to get a vastly different sort of like look and feel. So that didn't look too bad. Let's go and now make it so that our player can impact the ground and then stand there. Dato, hello, good morning. I mean, good evening, afternoon for you, I believe, but because you're in France, right? And so an update, we now want to impact against the ground. Dusty Posy, hello. Yes, it is afternoon in France. Awesome. How's your game going? Because I know you're doing a mobile, like an Android game in GG Easy, right? Self.player.run, and so we now want to impact against the ground. So we could have the player handle this, or we can like get it and like calculate it ourselves and like tell the player, hey, you're impacting against the ground. And maybe what I can do is say, okay, pub function sort of hit ground. Mute self, and then we're gonna have the like we need the arena height. So the player needs to be aware of the arena height. This is an F32. And we're not going to return anything here either. We're going to instead just do our calculations and like mutate our location and the velocity so that everything like works with that. It's a PC game. You have a prototype, but you move from GG Easy to Tetra, right? Because you were running into performance problems with GG Easy, right? I've seen you streaming. If you speak French, take a look at Doto's. Let's see. I actually have here. I believe it's twitch.tv/Dato. If you speak French, Dato streams while he's making his game. And I've stopped by and looked at it a few times, but I don't speak French, so it's like I usually end up sort of like, okay, this is really cool looking. I'm gonna get back to work now. All right, so hit ground. We have the arena height, so we want to check to see if we're below the height. So if self.location.y, so if our y-axis, now if we remember, our y-axis is the top left of our location. So we also need to add our height to get the bottom, like our feet. So plus self.height. So if self.location of y plus self.height, if that is greater than arena height, then what do we want to do? We want to now reset our location. So self.location.y, we're going to set this to the arena height minus self.height. So that way, we're just going to be barely standing on the ground. And I also want to reset our velocity, our y velocity going down, because that way at least we're it's not continuing to put pressure on us to go downwards. Now, of course, gravity always adds that in, but at least if we've built up a lot of downward velocity, it'll stop. So we'll do self.velocity.y equals 0.0. So we'll just set that. You're German, but when creating content for a broad audience, you really need to fall back on English. It also depends, I think, on like why you're streaming, right? Like if you're streaming just to like make your game and that's like a good way of keeping yourself honest, then I don't know if it matters that much. But if you want to like get a big audience and like teach lots of people, then I probably agree. But then again, I don't know any other languages. Like I learned Spanish in high school and I was terrible at it. That being said, like, I think that we need more streams with specific languages because there are some people that don't know English very well. So, yeah, I think both work really well. I do have a friend, and they did a tutorial in Spanish for web development, and there's just so few non-English good tutorials out there. So, I think that's a good Good space to be in. All right, so this resets our velocity. So that's our hit ground. If we now run this, we're gonna need to get our, we need to actually get that entire arena size. So let's arena width, arena height equals graphics, drawable size. There it is. Hand it the context. That gives us this tuple. We're not going to be using arena width right this second. And now we can call self.player.hit ground and pass it the arena height. Save that. This should just work now. We'll find out. You've had some French in school. It didn't stick though. Like nothing. I don't know why. Learning languages, especially one other language, is really tough. So like I don't blame you. Of course, like I have the same problem. I learned Spanish and it didn't stick with me. Error. Okay, so context. Oh, you need not to be underscored. That should help. There we go. And our player is now started sitting. Oh, look, the edge of my camera is like right at the edge of where the player is. That's cool too. There's a barrier when trying to force yourself to speak any language other than the one you grew up with. I mean, I could see that. I could also but I know that kids, like children learning new languages can learn them really easily. I think it's the same with like programming languages too. Once you like learn the first one or two, then more of them is going to be really easy. Especially the Latin-based languages. They're similar enough. Like I know in French and Spanish, like bibliothèque, pronounced horrifically, I'm sorry, is those are both like libraries, right? You grew up bilingual, so yeah. So that makes, that totally makes sense then. All right, we have our update. Our player now hits the ground. So gravity applies, the player hits the ground and then just stays there. So perfect. The next thing we want to do is make it so that we can, well, we want to make it so that we're running, right? So instead of actually like having an entire camera system, an entire world, we're going to cheat and we're going to have the obstacles that we need to drop over moving towards us. Our player just stands still and just has to jump up and down. So maybe, do I want to do jump next?